In my last video, I analyzed Alibaba as a business. And if you haven't watched that video, please click on the link above. So now that we've analyzed Alibaba as a business, maybe you've decided that this is the business you want to own. So what do we do next? Well, before we move on, I want to refer to a famous investor, Howard Marks. And what he said was, no company can be so good that it can't be overpriced. So what he's trying to say is that even if you buy a good business, it can be a terrible investment if you overpay for it. So what he's suggesting you to do is that you should always buy businesses at cheap or at a discount. Your next question might be, how do I know if a business is cheap or not? Well, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to calculate the intrinsic value of Alibaba. And we're going to use the Phil Town method. Now, Phil Town, he's also a famous investor and he wrote the Rule 1 book. Now, for anyone that wants to get into investing, I definitely recommend this book as the starting point. Anyway, with that said, let's get calculating the intrinsic value of Alibaba. Intrinsic value is the fair price of a business. That means the price is not overvalued, not undervalued, but just right. And the main factor in determining the intrinsic value of a business is by looking at what the business is going to make in the next 10 years. So there are 4 numbers that we need. I'm going to explain to you what these 4 numbers are and show you how to find them. All you need is an Excel and also the website that I'm going to recommend, and that is roic.ai. And I've included the link to this website in the description below. The first number we need is the current EPS, or earnings per share. And this is the business's annual profit per share. You can find this number in row 2. Now what we want is the TTM, which is trailing 12 months. And this is the latest 12 months of earnings. And in this case, it's $7.08. The next number we need is the future growth rate. It is the business's equity growth. Now, equity is what you own in the business. Equity grows as the business makes money and puts it back into the business. To give you some reference, it's like when you own a house and have a mortgage. The principal is your equity, and as you repay the mortgage, you are adding equity. Now, to find this number, it is under annual growth rates. Book value is just another way to call equity. Now, if you look at the book value in the past 5 and 10 years, it's over 30%. And if you look at the earnings past 5 and 10 years, it's also over 30%. However, I know that last year, the earnings growth was only 9%. And that's because in my last video, I mentioned that Alibaba had a pretty terrible year in 2021. To be conservative, I think that 30% is a bit too high. So in this case, I want to use 20%. The next number we need is the future PE, which stands for price to earnings ratio. To give you some reference, a business with a high PE ratio means that the price of the business is high compared to how much it makes. This is usually the case for growing businesses. And the opposite is true. A business with a low PE ratio means that the price of the business is cheap compared to how much it makes, usually for more mature companies. Now, to find this PE ratio, we need to look at row 8, the average annual PE ratio. And if you have a look at it, in 2014, it had a very high PE, and now it has a very low PE. Now, we want to be conservative again, so let's use the lowest PE ratio, which is 17. So the final number we need is the required rate of return. And this is the minimum return you and I want to make from investing. And this one's really easy because Phil Town recommends 15%. Now what 15% means is if we buy it at an intrinsic value, every year we should be making 15% from our investment. So now that we have all the information, let's try to calculate this in the Excel. First thing we need to do is grow the EPS, the earning per share, by 20% every year for 10 years. So we decided to use an earnings per share of $7.08. We then add 20%, and we do that 10 times. The next step is to multiply the earnings per share at the 10th year by the PE ratio of 17. And what that answer is, that is the price of the business after 10 years. So say right now is 2022, this would be the price of the business in 2032. Now, we don't want to pay the price of a business in 2032 now. So what should we pay instead? Well, to work this out, we need to use the concept time value of money. It is the idea that money in the future is worth less now. So now we need to bring that price back to the present. We need to reduce it by 15%. It is the required rate of return recommended by Phil Town. And we need to do this 10 times to bring it back to 2022. That becomes the intrinsic value, $186. Now, before we continue, remember what Howard Marks said. He said, always buy a business at cheap or at a discount. And this is where the margin of safety concept comes in. So margin of safety is what Howard Marks refers to as buying a business for cheap or at a discount. It's like buying something on a Black Friday sale. So essentially what we need to do is give a 50% off on the intrinsic value. And since the intrinsic value is $186, the margin of safety is $93. Now, what this margin of safety does is it protects me from my errors in calculation or uncertainty in the market. And I'll give you two examples of what errors of calculations I could have made. The first one is, what if for the next 10 years, the business doesn't grow at 20% that I estimated? What if it grows lower than that? The second one is, what if by the 10th year, the PE ratio is not 17.2, it's lower? So margin of safety protects me from errors in my estimates and it stops me from losing money. Phil Town's method to calculating the intrinsic value of a business is a simple and quick way to find out whether a business is cheap or not. And I think that every investor should have this method in their back pocket because it's very useful. However, I do find that there is a problem with this method, and it's the using of earnings. What I know about using earnings is that earnings can be highly manipulated by company accounting. So what I like to use instead is something called a free cash flow. And I'm going to explain to you what a free cash flow is in my future videos. I hope you got some good value out of this video. I'm going to be showing you more methods in calculating the intrinsic value of a business. And my intention is that you can compare all these different methods and see which one suits your needs. Anyway, if you like this video, give me a like and subscribe. Have a good week, and I'll see you in the next video.